Welcome to Using Your Teacher Voice, episode 24. Today I want to talk about the second rule for survival. As I wrote it, it said, if you're an educator, support educators who don't follow the old, tired, worn out, traditional, ineffective methods. Again, talking about the rules for survival and how to make education better, and how to keep yours, a little bit of your sanity a little bit along the way. I like to think that teachers fall in three kind of broad categories. When it comes to innovation and change, we fall into three categories. Um, Group one are the innovators. They're the ones that are out trying new things. They're experimenting. They're looking for the new. They're sharing those new things with other teachers when they find them. They seek out and they look for. They're the leaders. They're the ones that when we talk about teacher leaders, they're the ones we point to. Um, Unfortunately, this number is a kind of a small number. There's not, there is a number of innovators, but it's not like the vast majority of them by any stretch of imagination. It's a small kind of fraternity. There is probably an equally small group of teachers who are the exact opposite. So if there are people out there leading by example and saying, look at all this great stuff we can do and how we can innovate and change and get better, there's also that group of teachers that are saying, why do we need to change? That's not what we do. This has always worked. The traditional is the best. These newfangled things are just fads. They're actively trying not to change, and they're actively keeping people from changing. If the innovators are sharing their ideas, this other group is kind of encouraging people not to do things new. I would not say that they are, don't do this or I'm going to hurt you or whatever. It's not a threat thing like that, but it's that constant kind of talking down about it. That's stupid. Who would do that? That is a horrible idea. That's just a fad. Those things will never do. When they say those kinds of things, the people that listen to them, the people that are influenced by them, the people that are around them, they tend not to do those innovative things because, again, that's kind of the message they're hearing, that it's not a good idea. Again, it is a relatively small group, fortunately, but they are out there. I think the vast majority of teachers out there, I think the vast majority are people who really want to do good and do great things and new things and be innovative and try new things, but they just don't know how to. It may be that they're new teachers and or that they're new into their content areas and they're a little overwhelmed by those things. Maybe they just don't have those skills yet to try these new whatever. Maybe they're not comfortable with technology. Um, Maybe they just don't know what they don't know. They know that there's a better way of doing it, but they don't know how to do it. There's any number of reasons why they don't. I think the vast majority of teachers fall in this category, like I said, and it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just that they just don't know how. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. And once they see these things or they're given the right encouragement and the right support, then they do good things. They do great things and innovative things, and they make changes. But they're not the leaders, they're the followers, and they need that support and guidance. So the question is, why should we be supporting these innovators? That kind of sounds like a rhetorical question in a way, right? Like, duh, they're the leaders. Well, I think we need to be supporting them because they do need our encouragement. To be a leader, to be an innovator, takes a lot of capital, both emotionally and intellectually. These are people out there who are constantly going out and they're searching and researching and listening. They're going to conferences, they're going to workshops, they're following people on Twitter, and they have a very active PLN and PLCs that share these ideas, and they experiment with them and they try them out and they adapt them. And it takes a lot of emotional capital because not only are these people, constantly emotion and constantly trying things out, they sometimes fail. They try something new and it just doesn't work. Um, Sometimes it's that they're expected to be doing new things. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way that, oh, you're an innovator. I expect you to be innovating this, and oh, well, you're an innovator. How come you haven't done this yet? And again, sometimes they become the people that they're asked to do everything. They're the ones that sit on every committee and every group and every every kind of new movement they get involved in, sometimes because they want to, but sometimes it's because they're being asked to, because they're the innovators, they're the leaders, and they're just expected to do so. That becomes tiring after a while. By giving them encouragement, it kind of shows them that what they're doing is worthwhile, is valuable, and people see the value in that, and people want them to continue doing that. I think it's also important to support these people, because you will learn something from them when you're watching what they're doing and seeing what they're doing, and seeking advice from them. You get better. You learn those things. You learn new skills. You learn new abilities. You learn new methods, and a fresh perspective of thinking. It's very important. It keeps you moving in the right direction as well. Um, I think also too that, you know, by supporting these people, and learning from them, encouraging from them, and just developing that relationship with them, with the innovators, it also helps the innovator. It gives them a fresh perspective on things. It helps them think of things in a different way. I'll give you two examples from my personal life, or my own experiences. Um, One was, I was talking to a friend of mine about this Google Slides that I was using for a daily agenda in my classes. Same slides. I just updated, republished it to web. Well, my students had the link already. They knew, just go into the folder, open this, and there it is, and it would have the newest information when they opened it up. It was really helpful. It was really effective. I wish I could say that I always used it. That I always use it. I sometimes, time gets behind. I get behind on time, and I cut some corners, and that's sometimes a corner I cut. But telling a friend of mine about this, and we were looking at it, and he was asking me some questions, and then he looked at me and goes, "Could this be used for school announcements?" And I had never thought of that. I had this, kind of vision of it in my classroom and using it for my classroom. I had never thought about that. Much wider reach, much wider audience. And there's no reason why it couldn't work. It was just something I had not thought of. So it gave me a different way of thinking about it. Another example, too, and I've talked about this before on a previous podcast, was about, a group of three of us where we took one of my I had a spreadsheet that I was using to email missing work assignments, and I had shared that with other people, and then a coworker of mine, she came to me and she's like, "Hey, what can we do to improve this?" And well, I never really thought about improving it because it was doing what I needed it to do. But when she started talking, I realized, like, this is kind of a manual approach. There's a better way of doing this, isn't there? And then we brought another guy in, and with him I learned some things, and he helped us with some technical parts, and we went with him and said, "Hey, this is what we want to do," and he said, "Let's try this and this," and we experimented. When I said, this works, but not what we wanted to do, and we all got better. So I think by supporting the innovators, again, it encourages them, it keeps them motivated, it keeps them moving forward, it keeps them innovating. It helps the people supporting them because they learn new things. And I think it helps everybody because the innovator has, a fresh perspective. People come to him and say, "Hey, this is something I'm wanting to do." So that innovator goes out and they look for these things and they learn things that, they didn't know was a problem maybe. Now, the rule is don't support those that don't do good things. Uh, I just explained to you why we support the innovators. Yes, we should not support those people on the opposite end. Now, some of you might think, well, isn't that the same, right? Isn't that what you just said? What's the difference? Supporting the innovators, not supporting the detractors. What's the difference? It's the same thing. Well, it really isn't. It goes back to an idea that I talk about with digital citizenship. One of the things in digital citizenship I say is that you need to leave the internet in a better place, in a better way than you found it. By contributing to the internet and adding in content and adding in information and sharing stuff with other people, good, positive, important, useful information, it makes the internet a much more collaborative and positive environment, right? A useful environment. It also crowds out those negative things that are unfortunately very easy to find. And so if you are out there providing this good, rich content that is useful and meaningful, it makes that negative stuff less dominant. And again, I think that we don't support these detractors because it makes them less of a factor. By not paying attention to them, by not giving, if you support these detractors, if the more people are around them, the more of an audience they have. And just like the encouragers for supporters, when say, hey, that's great, keep doing that. When these detractors have an audience, it validates their position and it keeps them going, in that same line. So by not paying, them that kind of respect, and maybe even encouraging them to, hey, let's try this. Why don't you try this? Why don't you look at this? It again makes all of us better because it raises the level of everybody. And it kind of, if there are those teachers in the middle, like I said, that vast majority of people who are looking for guidance from somebody, if they fall into that group with those negative people, it really prevents them from trying anything new. Again, I think that, Dave Burgess in his book Teach Like a Pirate says that not every, some people are just scared about his approach, his showman approach, because they just feel like they don't have that in them. And I think that's true, that not everybody can be that performer, but I think everybody has the ability to be that positive agent of change. And I think that if we as a profession look to support those people and to limit those negative detractors, then I think we all get better and we improve the profession as a whole.